congratulations on the NBA record, Angel. Tell me about you guys. Yeah. Well, you know what I'm talking about. She knows.
No, I don't, because I be setting NBA records too.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. All right. So tell me.
Reese has made the damn news again. And I'm telling you right now, Angel Reese had figured out a way to epically troll the WNBA and all of her haters. And I have to say, she's genius for it. She is. She know everybody don't like her. And she say little things to make sure she try to stay relevant, because we know it's slowly diminished, and Angel Reese will realize, damn, my hype going down. Let me do some foolish stuff or say something.
This the player of the year, so I want all the smoke. All the smoke. So
who's the best player in the country?
To the media or me?
As you see it.
I feel like I'm the best player in the country. Yeah, the reason why we watching women's basketball is not just because of one person. It's because of...
I be setting NBA records too. I don't know what you talking about. Oh my God, Angel. Look at Angel. Angel's got locked up by Cameron Brink, then fell on the floor and started crying, bro. Look, this.
What if Angel Reese just delivered one of the most undeniable performances of her young career, broke 2 major WNBA records, helped the Atlanta Dream secure a playoff spot, and then managed to turn the entire basketball internet upside down with one playful sentence? That is exactly why this story is so much bigger than the viral clip that started it. Reese walked into Los Angeles with an opportunity to create a moment that should have been impossible to ignore. She grabbed 26 rebounds against the Sparks, breaking Shameik Holdsclaw's previous WNBA single-game record of 24 rebounds that had stood since 2003. Then, as if that were not enough, she pushed her season total to 458 rebounds and passed Aja Wilson's previous single-season WNBA record of 451. She finished the night with 11 points, 3 assists, and 3 steals, while Atlanta escaped with a 78-71 victory and secured a place in the playoffs. Those numbers are not a social media exaggeration. They are not a clever marketing trick. They are real records, and they belong to Angel Reese. Yet somehow, that was not the sentence everyone remembered. During the post-game conversation, a reporter congratulated Reese and referenced an NBA record, and Reese responded with a playful line about setting NBA records too. Almost immediately, the internet did what it always does with Angel Reese. Some people laughed. Some people defended her confidence. Others treated the remark as proof that she was once again trying to place herself in a conversation bigger than the WNBA. And suddenly, the story was no longer simply about a young forward rewriting the league's rebounding history. It became another chapter in the endless Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark conversation. They are not a clever marketing trick. They are real records, and they belong to Angel Reese. Yet somehow, that was not the sentence everyone remembered. During the post-game conversation, a reporter congratulated Reese and referenced an NBA record, and Reese responded with a playful line about setting NBA records too. Almost immediately, the internet did what it always does with Angel Reese. Some people laughed, some people defended her confidence. Others treated the remark as proof that she was once again trying to place herself in a conversation bigger than the WNBA. And suddenly, the story was no longer simply about a young forward rewriting the league's rebounding history.
A new WNBA record for rebounds in a game, 26 rebounds in a game. Glad that's over. We sure spent a lot of time on that, didn't we? Let's get into the highlights, shall we? The Angel Reese highlights, that is. Again, I just said she had 26 rebounds. What more do you want me to do? Good job. Angel Reese went off tonight. 11 points, 4 for 4 from the field, 3 turnovers, almost as many turnovers as field goals made. Got blocked by Cam Brink 5 times. Again, 26 rebounds.
If you're enjoying the video so far, take a second to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. It became another chapter in the endless Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark conversation. Another argument about personality, another debate over who is really moving women's basketball forward, and another opportunity for critics to decide whether Reese is confident or arrogant. But there is a detail that makes the entire situation far more interesting. The viral comment was never the most impressive thing Reese did that night. The actual achievement was sitting right there in the box score. She had just produced the greatest rebounding performance in WNBA history. And if you strip away the social media noise, that accomplishment tells a much bigger story about how far Reese has already come, how much her game has developed, and why the next chapter of her career could be far more important than the rivalry that originally made her famous. Start with the record itself, because this is where the loudest criticism has nowhere to hide. 26 rebounds in one professional basketball game is an extraordinary number under any circumstances. The previous WNBA. Start with the record itself, because this is where the loudest criticism has nowhere to hide. 26 rebounds in one professional basketball game is an extraordinary number under any circumstances. The previous WNBA record was 24, set by Shameik Holdsclaw more than 2 decades earlier.
Said that she sets NBA records, and it's not as crazy as it might sound. In her game yesterday, she broke the WNBA record for rebounds in a game with 26. While she had a bad shooting night, she nearly out-rebounded the Sparks by herself, grabbing 18 defensive and 8 offensive rebounds. So far in her career, she's actually in the upper echelon for many NBA and WNBA records. For example, she is second all-time in most double-doubles in the first 75 games in a career in the NBA or WNBA. In rebounds per 36 minutes, Angel Reese is third all-time NBA and WNBA behind Wilt and Bill Russell. Of course, her rebounds technically help that number, but you don't become an all-time rebounder just off of offensive rebounds. In Reese's career, she averages 7.9 defensive rebounds per game. And that 7.9 number would put her in the top 20 in NBA history, comparable to guys like Tim Duncan and Larry Bird. And even if these records are mainly rebound related, rebounds are still one of the most important parts of basketball. When you look at the stats, Angel Reese is one of the best rebounders in basketball history. So as crazy as this quote might sound, it's not actually far from the truth.
For years, that number survived as one of those records that seemed almost untouchable. Then Reese arrived. Against the Sparks, she grabbed 18 defensive rebounds and 8 offensive rebounds, giving Atlanta possession after possession, while Los Angeles struggled to keep her away from the glass. The significance becomes even clearer when you realize what those offensive rebounds actually mean. An offensive rebound is not simply another number beside a player's name. It can extend a possession that should have ended. It can create another shot. It can force defenders into foul trouble.
Reese moves inside on Brink, blocked by Brink. Reese got it back, turns, blocked again.
Travel. God, Angel Reese went from Atlanta to LA with the amount of traveling she just did. Holy smokes. And that wouldn't be an Angel Reese highlight if she's not falling on the floor, right? If she's not falling on the floor, it just wouldn't be right if she's not falling on the floor.
It can completely change the rhythm of a game. A defensive rebound can immediately end an opponent's possession and allow the team to run in transition. Reese was doing both. She was not simply collecting empty statistics while the game happened around her. Her presence around the basket was actively changing the possession battle, and the timing was perfect for Atlanta. The Dream were already in the middle of a strong season, and the victory over Los Angeles completed a perfect 4-0 West Coast road trip while securing the team's playoff berth.
Last night, Angel Reese was shut down by that player. Blocked 5 times by Cameron Brink. If the WNBA was covered as honestly as other sports, real sports, if the WNBA was scrutinized like the NFL, the NBA, we would be talking about Cameron Brink as one of the biggest busts in the draft. 2 years ago, she was the 2nd overall pick in the 2024 WNBA draft. It was Caitlin Clark, then Cameron Brink. I don't think I need to explain who's had the better career. So far, Cam Brink has been a major disappointment, but last night was the highlight of her career. She completely dominated Angel Reese.
That means Reese's historic individual performance was connected to something much larger. She was not breaking the record on a team going nowhere. She was doing it while helping a legitimate playoff team win. That distinction matters because individual statistics become far more meaningful when they translate into team success. Critics can debate shooting percentages, offensive limitations, and whether Reese needs to become a more consistent scorer, and those are legitimate conversations. But there is no serious argument that 26 rebounds are meaningless. There is no reasonable way to call that performance empty. The record had survived since 2003, and Reese broke it in one night. She also surpassed Wilson's single-season rebounding mark, which makes the achievement even more impressive. A'ja Wilson is one of the most dominant players in modern women's basketball, so taking one of her records is not a small accomplishment.
Started from the national championship game, and I've been dealing with this for 2 years now. And understanding, like, yeah, negative things have probably been said about me, but honestly, I'll take that because look where women's basketball is. People are talking about women's basketball, but you never would think that we'd be talking about women's basketball. People are pulling up to games. We got celebrities coming to games, sold out arenas, like just because of one single game. And just looking at that, like, I'll take that role. I'll take the bad guy role, and I'll continue to take that on and be that for my teammates. And if I want to be that, and I know I'll go down in history, I'll look back in 20 years and be like, yeah, the reason why we watching women's basketball is not just because of one person, it's because of me too, and I want y'all to...
Reese has now established herself as the standard in an area of the game where consistency matters more than one hot shooting night. She has led the league in rebounding in each of her first 2 seasons, and she has continued doing it again this year. That is not a coincidence. That is a skill. It is a skill Reese has developed into one of the most dangerous weapons in her game. And the more she improves everything around that skill, the more difficult it becomes for opponents to treat her as anything other than a major star. But then came the sentence that changed the conversation. After the historic performance, the post-game discussion turned toward an NBA comparison, and Reese joked that she sets NBA records too. Taken literally, that statement would obviously be inaccurate because the NBA and WNBA maintain separate official record books.
Best player in the country.
To the media or me?
As you see it.
I feel like I'm the best player in the country.
Okay, who's the second best player in the country?
Shit. Either Caitlin Clark or Leah Boston.
That's fair.
Top 3. I feel like we the top 3 players.
And that's the thing I love. You spoke on that. You respect the hell out of
Caitlyn's
Caitlin's
hell
game.
Yeah, I respect them. Yeah, for sure. Me and Caitlyn been playing against each other since high school. We've been going at it. So it's no hard blood between me and her. She's a great competitor. She's a great player. We knew going into the game, she was going to score her 30. We knew that.
Yeah, facts.
It was about the other factors that we needed to make sure they wasn't getting theirs. So we knew going to the game.
Reese did not break Wilt Chamberlain's single-game NBA rebounding record. She did not enter the NBA record book by playing in a WNBA game. Her actual accomplishment was breaking the WNBA's single-game record and the WNBA's single-season record. That is already enough. But the reason the comment became so entertaining is because Reese has built a reputation for being comfortable with confidence. She does not usually speak as if she needs permission to believe she is good. She has been willing to say she belongs among the best. She has been willing to embrace the villain role.
You made a powerful statement saying the reason people are watching women's basketball is not just because of one player, but because of you two. A year later, do you feel like you're
Next question.
Yeah, we'll move on.
She has been willing to push back against the idea that Caitlin Clark is the only player responsible for the explosion of interest surrounding women's basketball. And because people already know that side of her personality, even a playful comment can become a much larger event. That is what happened here. One group heard a joke and laughed. Another group heard arrogance. Another group immediately connected it to the Clark-Reese rivalry. Another group decided it was evidence that Reese was desperate for attention. And another group defended her by pointing toward the actual statistics. The funny thing is that the more people argued about whether the sentence was appropriate, the more they accidentally reinforced the very thing they were arguing about. They kept Angel Reese's name at the center of the conversation. That is the strange power of modern sports celebrity. A player can break a record, make one joke, and watch the joke become more viral than the record, but the record is still there. And when the noise eventually fades, the record is what will remain.
Caitlin Clark has more career games with 30 points and 10 assists than all of the WNBA in the history of the league. Did you hear what I just said? I didn't say she had more 30-point, 10 assist games than Candace Parker, or than Diana Taurasi, or than Cynthia Cooper. The entire history of the league combined. And this is only her 3rd season, and she's done it already. And she missed a lot of her last season with an injury. Caitlin Clark is the MVP. Period. Not only is she the MVP, she's one of the best women's players we have ever seen. Yes, I said it. I'll say it on First Take. I'll say it on Pat McAfee. I'll say it on Nightcap with Shannon and Ocho. I'll say it on Dan Patrick. I'll say it on Colin Cowherd. And I've been watching women's basketball for a while. I was watching Teresa Witherspoon and Cynthia Cooper. Caitlin Clark is one of the best women's players we have ever seen. Period.
In 20 years, nobody is going to care whether one social media account thought Reese sounded arrogant after the game. Historians will still be able to look up who grabbed 26 rebounds in a WNBA game. They will still see that Reese passed Holdsclaw. They will still see that she passed Wilson's single-season mark. They will still see that Atlanta made the playoffs. That is why the smartest way to look at this controversy is not to pretend the quote was something it was not. It was a playful moment that became a viral talking point because of Reese's personality and the enormous amount of attention surrounding her. The real story is what happened before she ever said those words. And this is where the criticism of Reese's offensive game enters the picture. 11 points on 4 of 14 shooting is not an efficient offensive performance. There is no reason to pretend otherwise. Reese has areas of her offensive game that still need work. Her finishing can become more consistent. Her shooting can become more reliable. Her decision-making can improve. There are nights when opponents successfully make her uncomfortable around the basket.
WNBA is dealing with a lot of controversy. There is a singular reason that the league is now in a much better spot financially, and that reason is Caitlin Clark. She is Steph Curry, but with kind of a Michael Jordan mindset. All business, all basketball, has no opinion or comment on the controversies. So with all this drama and nonsense around her, Caitlin Clark, #1 in assists, #3 in scoring, best offense in league history. She's not driving the controversy. Like Michael Jordan, she's all business. If she wins the title, all of this stuff, she'll be the cake, it'll be a little...
And those weaknesses are fair game for basketball analysis. But the mistake is assuming that because Reese struggled to score, she somehow failed to dominate. Basketball does not work that way. A player can shoot poorly and still control a game. Reese demonstrated exactly that. She could not consistently convert her opportunities, so she attacked another part of the game with even more intensity. She rebounded everything. She created extra possessions. She defended. She stayed involved. She did not disappear because the jumper was not falling. That is one of the clearest signs of a player learning how to become valuable, even when her favorite part of the game is not working. Imagine the alternative. A player shoots 4 of 14 and decides she is having a bad night, stops attacking, stops competing for rebounds, and allows the game to pass her by. Reese did the opposite. She turned the one area she could completely control into a weapon. That is why the performance deserves more credit than the 11-point total suggests. The same principle applies to the criticism that she is only a rebounder. At some point, a skill becomes so elite that calling it only, that skill becomes ridiculous. If someone said a player was only an elite 3-point shooter, people would immediately understand that elite shooting can change an entire offense. If someone said a player was only an elite passer, nobody would dismiss that because passing can control the entire game. Rebounding works the same way. Reese's rebounding changes possessions. It changes second chance opportunities. It changes how defenders have to box out. It forces opponents to devote attention to her before the shot even goes up. Her presence creates physical pressure. And because she is so consistent in that area, teams cannot simply hope she has an off night. They have to prepare for her. The offensive weakness is real, but so is the rebounding dominance. Both facts can exist at the same time. The most accurate evaluation of Reese is not that she is perfect. She is not. It is also not that she is overrated, because she is not a complete scorer yet. The more interesting evaluation is that she has already mastered one of the most difficult skills in professional basketball and is now trying to bring the rest of her game up to that level. That is a very different story. The Cameron Brink angle makes this even more interesting because critics immediately tried to turn individual defensive possessions into evidence that Reese had been exposed. But basketball is full of those moments. A great offensive player gets blocked. A great defender gets scored on. A rebounder gets boxed out. A shooter misses an open shot. None of those moments automatically define the player. Brink is a talented defender, and when she makes a good defensive play against Reese, that should be acknowledged. But one defensive sequence does not erase 26 rebounds. Even if Reese struggles in certain possessions against a particular defender, the larger question is what she contributes across an entire game. In Los Angeles, the answer was obvious. She contributed one of the greatest rebounding performances the league has ever seen. That is why the Brink locked her up narrative is too simplistic. It focuses on the most visually entertaining clips and ignores the full statistical picture. Social media rewards that kind of selective storytelling because a blocked shot is easier to package than a discussion about 18 defensive rebounds and 8 offensive rebounds. A block can be replayed in 5 seconds. Rebounding dominance requires context. That is one reason players with elite rebounding skills can be undervalued by casual viewers. The impact is spread across dozens of possessions instead of concentrated into one spectacular moment. Reese's game is built around that constant pressure. She may not always give you the highlight people expect from a guard, but she can make an opponent feel her presence over an entire game. That is especially valuable in playoff basketball. When the pace slows down and every possession becomes more important, extra possessions can become the difference between winning and losing. Atlanta now gets to test Reese in exactly that environment. The Dream have earned their postseason opportunity, and Reese has a chance to show that her regular season production can translate into playoff impact. That is the next question nobody can answer yet. Can she maintain the rebounding dominance when defenses are specifically designed to neutralize her? Can she score efficiently enough that opponents cannot simply ignore her offensive game? Can she punish teams that send extra defenders toward the glass? Can she become a reliable offensive option late in games? Those are the questions that will ultimately determine how high her ceiling goes. The record is already hers. The next challenge is proving that the player behind the record can become a postseason force. And this is where the endless Caitlin Clark comparison needs to be handled carefully. Reese and Clark are connected because their rivalry became one of the defining stories in women's basketball before either player entered the WNBA. Their college battles created enormous attention. The 2023 National Championship game became a cultural moment. The 2024 Elite Eight matchup between LSU and Iowa became another landmark event. When both players entered the WNBA, the comparison followed them everywhere. Trickery, Clark was the explosive guard with long-range shooting and elite passing. Reese was the physical forward with extraordinary rebounding ability and interior toughness. The media had two contrasting styles and two enormous personalities, and naturally the rivalry became part of the product. But there is a problem with constantly asking which player is better as if only one is allowed to succeed. It creates a false choice. Clark can become an elite guard without Reese being overrated. Reese can become an elite forward without Clark being overrated. Both can succeed at the same time. In fact, that would be the best possible outcome for the league. The more each player improves, the stronger their eventual meetings become. The rivalry does not need one player to collapse for the other to rise. It needs both players to become so good that every matchup feels like an event. Reese herself has repeatedly acknowledged that she and Clark have competed against each other for years and has spoken respectfully about Clark's abilities. That is something that often gets lost online because respect is less entertaining than hostility. A headline saying Reese respects Clark does not generate the same reaction as Reese takes another shot at Clark, so the internet naturally gravitates toward conflict. But the players do not have to live inside that manufactured conflict forever. Their careers can develop independently. Reese's Atlanta journey is already becoming its own story. Clark's Indiana career is becoming its own story. The fact that people continue comparing them does not mean the players need to spend their careers answering those comparisons. And that is why the latest record could be such an important moment for Reese. For once, she accomplished something that did not require Clark's name. The record belongs entirely to her. There is no Clark statistic attached to it. No college rivalry is required to explain it. No comparison is necessary. Angel Reese grabbed 26 rebounds, and that number stands alone. That is the kind of identity every young star eventually needs to build. You cannot spend your entire career being somebody else's rival. At some point, you have to become your own story. Reese's willingness to embrace controversy has always been part of that story. During her rookie season, she openly talked about the enormous attention surrounding women's basketball and rejected the idea that the growth of the sport could be attributed to only one player. Her famous "because of Me Too" comments were interpreted by some people as a direct attack on Clark. But her broader point was that many players had contributed to the sport's growth, and that she intended to be part of the next generation pushing it forward. She even said she was willing to take on the bad guy role if that was what people wanted to call her. That was a fascinating strategic choice. Most athletes try to avoid being disliked. Reese seemed willing to accept it, and there is a reason that can be powerful. Villains attract attention. Rivalries create emotional investment. People watch because they want someone to win, and sometimes they watch even harder because they want someone to lose. Reese's personality gives the WNBA another recognizable figure who does not speak like a corporate press release. She is confident. She can be sarcastic. She can be emotional. She can be provocative. And she is not afraid to acknowledge that people are watching her. That does not mean every controversial moment is deliberately engineered. There is no evidence that Reese creates every headline as part of some master plan, but she clearly understands that attention can be turned into influence. And in modern sports, influence is valuable. The same critics who complain that she receives too much attention often contribute to that attention by discussing her constantly. The same people who say she should disappear from the conversation keep her name trending by arguing about her. The same people who dismiss her achievements often create another opportunity for her to prove them wrong. It is a cycle. Reese knows how to operate inside it. The NBA records joke is a perfect example. She could have given a standard answer, thanked her teammates, and moved on. Instead, she added personality. That personality created a headline. The headline created debate. The debate created attention. And that attention ultimately brought even more people back to the actual achievement. The key is not to confuse attention with greatness. Attention alone does not make someone a superstar. The basketball has to support it. And that is where Reese is beginning to make the argument much stronger than she could 2 years ago. Because now the results are starting to catch up with the personality. Reese entered the WNBA with enormous hype, but her first 2 seasons in Chicago were complicated. The team struggled. Injuries and roster changes disrupted the environment. Reese produced impressive individual statistics, but the overall results were inconsistent. That gave critics an opening. They could argue that the numbers were not translating into winning. They could argue that her offensive limitations were too significant. They could argue that she was more famous than productive. Then Atlanta changed the environment. Reese joined a team that was already building a serious identity, and the results started changing. The dream became a playoff team. Reese's numbers remained elite. Her rebounding continued to dominate. Her offensive game began showing signs of growth. And suddenly, the argument was no longer simply about whether she was entertaining. It was about whether she could become one of the most valuable young forwards in the league. That is a much more serious basketball conversation. The Atlanta system has given her room to develop while allowing her greatest strength to remain central. She does not have to suddenly become a 25-point scorer to be valuable. She can dominate the glass, defend, facilitate, run the floor, and gradually add more scoring. That developmental path makes sense. The best young players are not finished products. They are collections of elite skills mixed with weaknesses they are still learning to manage. Reese's elite skill is obvious. Her rebounding is already historically good. The next stage is building enough offensive versatility around it that defenders can no longer predict what she is going to do. If that happens, the entire equation changes. Right now, opponents know they can challenge her in certain offensive situations. They know she can struggle when forced to create outside her comfort zone. But imagine a version of Reese who can consistently knock down a jumper, attack closeouts, make the correct pass when help arrives, and finish through contact. Now the defender has a problem. Give her space, and she can shoot. Crowd the paint, and she can attack. Collapse on her, and she can pass. Miss the box out, and she can destroy you on the glass. That is the potential Atlanta is developing. The most important thing about the record-breaking night is that Reese showed she does not need everything to go right to have an impact. Her shooting was not good. Her scoring total was modest. Yet she still found a way to become the most important rebounder on the floor. That is a quality coach's love. A player who can contribute only when shots are falling is limited. A player who can influence games when the shot is not falling is much more valuable. Reese demonstrated that resilience. She did not need to force 15 more shots just to prove she could score. She recognized that the glass was available and attacked it. That is basketball intelligence. It is not flashy, but it is effective. And it also explains why the "only a rebounder" insult has become increasingly outdated. Reese is not apologizing for what she does best. She is maximizing it while trying to expand everything else. There is a huge difference. A player who knows her strengths can build around them. A player who is embarrassed by her strengths may try to become something she is not. Reese has never seemed embarrassed by rebounding. If anything, she has embraced it so completely that she turned even the jokes about me-bounds into part of her identity. She has even used the term in connection with anti-cyberbullying merchandise, taking something critics used to mock her and turning it into a message about online harassment. That is another example of how she understands her public image. Instead of allowing the internet to define the joke, she took ownership of it. That does not mean everyone has to like the strategy. Some people will always find it irritating. But from a branding perspective, it is smart. The criticism becomes attention. The attention becomes recognition. Recognition becomes influence. And if the basketball results continue improving, the personality becomes an asset rather than a distraction. That brings us to perhaps the most important question. Is Angel Reese actually becoming the player she always believed she could be? The answer is beginning to look like yes, but with a very important qualification. She is not finished. Her offensive development still matters. Her efficiency still matters. Her ability to score against elite defenses still matters. Her postseason performance will matter even more. But the foundation is real. She is an elite rebounder. She is a double-double machine. She has established multiple records. She is helping a playoff team, and she is still young enough to add new dimensions to her game. That combination should scare opponents. A player who is already elite at one skill and has room to improve in several others can become much more dangerous than a finished player whose ceiling is already obvious. Reese's ceiling is not obvious yet. That is what makes her current trajectory so fascinating. She could remain one of the best rebounders in the league and develop into a reliable second or third offensive option. Or she could eventually become the central offensive player of a championship-level team. Nobody knows yet, but the 26 rebound game showed why dismissing that possibility would be foolish. And this is where the Clark comparison becomes useful one last time. Clark and Reese are often discussed as if their careers are competing for one trophy called "Who Changed Women's Basketball More?" That is not how history works. Sports are built by multiple stars. The WNBA's growth does not require a single person to receive all the credit. Clark's impact is enormous. Reese's impact is real. The veterans who built the league before them matter. The players competing today matter. The future players who will enter because they grew up watching Clark, Reese, Wilson, Stewart, Taurasi, and others will matter even more. Reese was making that broader point when she talked about wanting people to recognize that women's basketball was bigger than one person. She was not wrong about the basic principle. Where she sometimes lost people was in how confidently she expressed it. Confidence can be inspiring to one audience and irritating to another. Reese seems comfortable with that trade-off. She has accepted that not everyone will like her. She has accepted that some fans will cheer for her and others will root against her. And perhaps that is why she has been able to turn criticism into fuel. The most dangerous athlete is often the one who no longer needs everyone to approve of them. Reese appears increasingly comfortable with being misunderstood. If she plays well, she does not need a critic to admit it. If she breaks a record, the record exists regardless of what someone says online. If she makes a joke, people can interpret it however they want. She can move on to the next game. That mindset can be extremely powerful. The bigger problem is that the internet often wants athletes to choose between humility and confidence. If a player says she is the best, people accuse her of arrogance. If she says someone else is better, people accuse her of lacking confidence. If she celebrates herself, she is criticized. If she stays quiet, people say she has disappeared. Reese has chosen the most difficult path. She speaks confidently and accepts the backlash. That means every statement gets examined under a microscope, but it also means every successful performance becomes more satisfying for her supporters. When she breaks a record after being told she is only a rebounder, the moment feels bigger. When Atlanta reaches the playoffs after her Chicago team struggled, the moment feels bigger. When she develops a new part of her game, the moment feels bigger. The same personality that creates controversy can create momentum. That is why it is too easy to dismiss her as someone who simply wants attention. Maybe she enjoys attention. Most professional athletes do. But wanting attention and being incapable of producing results are two completely different things. Reese is producing results. The question is how far those results can go. There is another layer to this that deserves attention. The WNBA itself benefits from the personalities of players like Reese and Clark. The league needs stars who create conversation. It needs rivalries that make casual fans care. It needs players who have distinct identities. For years, women's basketball struggled to receive the same level of mainstream attention as men's sports. Now the situation is changing rapidly. Clark brought an enormous new audience. Reese became one of the most recognizable young stars in the sport. Other players have benefited as well. The result is a league where individual personalities are now part of the product. That can create uncomfortable moments, but it also creates opportunity. A perfectly polished league where every player gives the same answer and every controversy is handled with the same corporate language might be safer, but it would also be less compelling. Reese's willingness to speak her mind is part of what makes people pay attention. The challenge is making sure the attention eventually leads back to basketball. In this case, it does. People came for the quote, but the reason the quote existed was because Reese had just done something extraordinary on the court. That is the ideal relationship between personality and performance. The personality creates curiosity. The performance provides substance. If Reese continues giving people both, she will remain one of the most talked about players in the sport. Now imagine what happens if Atlanta enters the playoffs and Reese has another performance like this. Imagine her grabbing 20+ rebounds in a postseason game. Imagine her scoring 20 points while controlling the glass. Imagine her hitting a clutch shot after opponents spend the entire game trying to keep her away from the basket. Imagine the dream advancing because Reese becomes impossible to keep off the boards. That would change the conversation again. Suddenly, nobody would care about the NBA record joke. The debate would become whether Reese is already one of the most important playoff players of her generation. That is why the postseason is so important. The regular season established her statistical dominance. The playoffs will test whether that dominance survives when opponents have more time to prepare and every weakness becomes a target. If Reese can answer those questions, her reputation will take another major step forward. The same is true for Clark. Her career will be judged by what happens in the biggest games. That is why the rivalry remains so interesting. If Clark and Reese eventually meet deep in the postseason, the matchup could become one of the defining rivalries in women's basketball. But the rivalry will be better if both players arrive as complete stars. Clark needs to be more than the player who shoots deep threes. Reese needs to be more than the player who grabs rebounds. Both are developing. Both have weaknesses. Both have enormous strengths. And both have already shown enough to suggest that their best basketball may still be ahead of them. That is the part the constant online arguing misses. People act as if the final verdict has already been written. It has not. Their careers are still developing. The record books are still being rewritten. The next 5 years could completely change how people view both players. Reese could become an elite offensive forward. Clark could become an all-time great playmaker. They could meet repeatedly in the playoffs. They could win championships. They could become Olympic teammates. They could eventually look back at the rivalry and laugh at how seriously fans treated every social media argument. Nobody knows. That uncertainty is what makes sports exciting. For now, however, the facts are enough. Angel Reese owns the WNBA single-game rebounding record with 26. She owns the WNBA single-season rebounding record after passing Aja Wilson. She has continued to produce double-doubles at an extraordinary rate. She has helped Atlanta reach the playoffs. And she did all of this while still having obvious areas of her game that can improve. That combination should not be ignored. The internet can debate her personality. It can debate whether her NBA comment was funny or unnecessary. It can debate whether her NBA comment was gross and indifferent. It can debate whether she is too confident. None of those debates change the numbers. And perhaps the most ironic thing about the entire controversy is that Reese may have accidentally proven her own point. She said people should recognize that women's basketball is not about one person. Then she went out and created a moment that belonged entirely to her. Nobody needed Caitlin Clark to explain it. Nobody needed a comparison. Nobody needed a rivalry. Angel Reese grabbed 26 rebounds. She broke a record that had survived for more than 20 years. She broke another record that belonged to one of the greatest players in the league. She helped her team win. And then she made a joke that reminded everyone why she is one of the sport's most recognizable personalities. That is a pretty good night. The critics may say the quote was arrogant. Supporters may say it was hilarious. Some fans will continue comparing her with Clark. Others will insist that the two should never be compared. But perhaps the smartest response is to acknowledge that Reese is allowed to be confident while still being a work in progress. She is allowed to celebrate a historic achievement while still needing to improve her scoring. She is allowed to joke about NBA statistics while the official record remains a WNBA record. She is allowed to have a personality, and she is allowed to build a career that does not depend on everyone liking her, because the most important thing is what happens next. Records create headlines. Playoff performances create legacies. If Reese can take this historic rebounding ability into the postseason and combine it with the offensive improvements she has been developing in Atlanta, the conversation could change dramatically. The player who once seemed defined almost entirely by the Clark rivalry could eventually become one of the defining players of the next WNBA era. That would be a much bigger accomplishment than winning an argument on social media. It would mean creating an identity that belongs completely to her. And that is probably what Angel Reese should want most. Not to be remembered as Caitlin Clark's rival, not to be remembered as the player who said something controversial, not to be remembered as the villain, not even to be remembered as the player who broke one record on one night. She should want to be remembered as Angel Reese, the player who turned an elite rebounding gift into a complete career, the player who kept improving, the player who embraced pressure, the player who helped Atlanta become a playoff team, the player who turned criticism into motivation, and eventually, perhaps, the player who became much more than anyone expected when she first entered the league. That is why the latest controversy may actually be the least important part of the story. The NBA records comment will eventually disappear. The memes will disappear. The arguments will disappear. The clips will stop circulating. But the 26 rebounds will remain in the record book. And that is where the story becomes almost poetic. People spent years arguing about whether Angel Reese deserved the attention she received. Then she went out and made history. People argued that she was only famous because of Caitlin Clark. Then she created a record that did not involve Clark at all. People questioned whether her rebounding could really translate into winning. Then Atlanta secured a playoff spot. People questioned whether her game could continue developing. Then she started showing signs of becoming a more complete player. Maybe that does not settle every debate. It does not need to. Sports are not supposed to settle every debate. They are supposed to create the next one. And Angel Reese has just created a very interesting one. How high can this player actually go? Because if 26 rebounds is what she can produce while still working on the rest of her game, imagine what happens when everything finally comes together. That is the part that should make the rest of the WNBA pay attention. The record is already hers. The playoff opportunity is already here. The rivalry with Clark is still there. The personality is still there. The critics are still there, but now there is something else. Evidence. And the next chapter will not be decided by what Angel Reese says into a microphone. It will be decided by what she does when the games matter most. So let the internet argue about whether she was joking. Let people debate the confidence. Let the memes run for another week. Because when the postseason begins, none of that will matter. The ball will go up. The defenders will fight for position. The shots will go up. And somewhere underneath the basket, Angel Reese will be waiting. 26 rebounds already changed the record book. The next question is whether the playoffs will change the way people see her.